Yes. Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Apologies for that. I just remembered I need to do a video on Ed Howe and Newcastle, and that's what I was taking down note of. Sorry, that's what I was noting down before starting this with you. But I hope you're all right. It's a beautiful Monday morning, the 23rd of March 2023. For those of you that are celebrating your birthdays today, we say happy birthday to you. We hope you're doing all right. It's not so sunny out there, but it's bright. It's okay. Looks like the sun is partly covered in the clouds there, that kind of feeling, and yet it's not coming off as cloudy. So, but yeah, I hope you guys are doing all right, and you will be okay going forward. We wish you a happy new and blessed week in as far as this week is concerned. We are back yet again to make sense of how Arsenal lost the Carabao Cup final, but then also we'll get the updates from the Madrid derby, which Real Madrid won by 3-2, despite being down to 10 men. Some really, really brilliant performances there from the likes of Andre Lunin. I thought to keep Real Madrid in the game. We'll talk about other things from the weekend, and it's the international break. We know usually during the international break, there's very little to look forward to, and therefore it can quickly become very boring or things like that. So, but nonetheless, we'll be discussing whatever there will be to discuss during the course of the international break. One thing you can be rest assured of is that we'll have the time to sort of digest this season. We'll have time to have a deeper insight on some of your clubs. I know for a fact that Liverpool fans are sort of on the edge in regards to Anna slots. I know that Manchester United fans, some, depending on where you stand or sit or how you look at things, that those that could be concerned about Michael Adrian Carrick following that 2-all draw against FC Bournemouth. Of course, they were down to 10 men as well, thanks to that sending off for Harry Maguire and things like that. And then we'll talk about the unpleasant narratives that have become over the English media or some sections of the Arsenal fans having a go at Bukayo Saka, and rightly so in part for his underwhelming performance in a cup final. Somebody put up a comment regarding Bukayo Saka, and I thought, I can't say it was interesting, but it's typical of the reactionary that you get when these kinds of things happen. He said that Arsenal fell for the same trap with Saka that United fell for with Rashford. Young, British, likable, moderately talented, with some decent stats over a short period, rewarded with wages far beyond their true abilities. Neither deserve more than 150 grand, but on 300k won't end well. That's their view, or that's their reaction to Bukayo Saka following that performance in the cup final. And so we'll get to talk about that. So now, usually when teams lose games, of course, we react to that the same way we do when they win. Only that the sentiments after winning are much different from when they lose. So when it comes to players, Misha Adila says hi. Hi, Misha Adila. Good morning. How good to have you on the broadcast. Where are you joining us from? My name is Robert Kesakos, in case you're wondering. I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda. Thank you. So, but I hope you're doing okay. Kindly do me the absolute honor and like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. So, like I was saying, the sentiments are always going to be there. If you win, the sentiments are different. They're more positive. And when you lose, they're going to be negative most of the time. Especially, and by the way, when you lose, like Arsenal lost in the cup final, it's really, really hard to find the positives, because it's not like it's a league game where you know that you're going to pick yourself up and sort of fight on again for the same competition. This one is entirely different because it's a final. You've lost, you're out, you miss out on a piece of silverware. It's done and dusted. So And yesterday we had a performance from this Arsenal side that felt like they did not rise to the occasion. You did not have any standout. You hardly had standout performers in the sense of trying to win the game. It's not to say you did not have standout performance entirely, because for me, in my humble opinion, I thought Declan Rice did really, really well in that game. I thought Gabriel Magalhaes and William Saliba, by the very bad news for the Arsenal fans, William Saliba has suffered an ankle injury and won't be partaking in the international break games for France there. It could pass for a blessing in disguise, but it depends on how you look at it. Because, first of all, for me, I thought he needed a rest. And when I say he needed a rest, was for some of these players who are almost guaranteed of being in their squads for the World Cup, and players that are playing or have played so many games or so many minutes thus far in the season, I would be of the view that when it comes to the international break, unless you're summoning them to be part of an environment that you're trying to build, especially for managers that are very new, that are still fairly new or relatively new in their roles, and I don't think there are many of that. But when you look at, let's say, Sweden national team with Graham Potter and things like that, I would understand that bit. But necessarily, if you have a player that is guaranteed of being in that squad at this stage, with almost just 2 months, to the World Cup, I think you should be trying out all the available players that are not guarantees to see if, to sort of fine tune your rest of the squad, because we know the same way any team has their core starting 11 and the others are backups or squad players, is the same way national team largely works, is that you have that core team, that component, the key starters, the sort of the spine of the team, whether it's, and usually it has to be at least 7 players. Those are 7 players that you're guaranteed. So in other words, test out all the others that are not guaranteed, and those that are in good form but I've never had a call. For example, in the wake of Arsenal's William Saliba suffering that ankle injury in the final yesterday, Crystal Palace's Maxence Lacroix has been summoned to join the national team. And that's okay. It's a good for Maxence Lacroix, even though it's not so good for Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace would have rather have him a bit more rested. But let's not forget, not too long ago, he got that red card that that I think in their loss to Man United, he got that red card and he had to sit out a couple of games. That notwithstanding, so if you're an Arsenal fan, you must be thinking about it this way. One, it gives William Saliba the ability or the chance to rest and try and recuperate and perhaps return a bit more fresher when the season resumes in the aftermath of the international break. And the slight beauty of it is that Arsenal do have a cup competition in the aftermath of the international break in the quarterfinal game against Southampton. So it's not the kind of game where you say it was a make or break in terms of needing William Saliba to start the game. You do have enough in your squad to have players like Piero Hincapié or players like Christian Mosquera, who has been summoned to the Spanish national team, David Cole, I think, in my opinion, Ricardo Carafiori, and the others to sort of slot in and play for you in that game. So if his ankle injury is not bad as feared, then possibly he could recover in the next 2 weeks, and that he will be available for their away trip to Sporting Lisbon, because hell, God knows they will need him, and in the subsequent games after that, because it will be Sporting CP, Bournemouth, Sporting CP again, and Manchester City. So they will really, really need him for those games. So that's the bad news out of the Arsenal camp regarding William Saliba. Just to digress back to the Bukayo Saka issue, is that when you lose a game, these negative sentiments are bound to happen, in the sense that, like I said, there were not so many standout performers. So going forward, I felt that people like Bukayo Saka did not rise to the occasion. Victor Gyökeres, maybe, but it's because Arsenal majority did not have the ball, so he wasn't as much involved as you have loved him to see. I Kai Havertz did not step up. He played in that sort of 10 role kind of position, but also for a player that is just returned from injury, has not gotten himself going, to pick up the momentum. It's a final. It has its pressure. It has its anxiety. You can't really blame him that much. So then you look at Leandro Trossard, never really came out of his shell. So, and even the substitutions that were made subsequently on did not, help much, because at the end of the day, you still had what would pass for, I don't, more like a muted performance, and that's the sort of concern. So all these sentiments that you're going to get about Bukayo Saka, his recent contract, and being underwhelming, or have Arsenal having what Man United had in Marcus Rashford, it's reactionary to that. And the reason as to why it's justified is because he did not give the performance that you would have expected him in the final. But if we are being fair, he's not had those kinds of performances throughout the entire season. Rarely, you're going to struggle to pick out games this season for Arsenal where you pick out Bukayo Saka as the standout performer. And if there have been many, I do not think there'll be more than a handful. So, because even in their 1-0 victory against Brighton and Hove Albion, yes, he won them that game by that goal that he scores, but the rest of the performance was an average performance. That's the honest bit, So I understand where those sentiments are coming from, or the justification of them in Arsenal fans making that. However, for a player that is been troubled with injuries, I know some people think I make excuses for them when I point out injuries, but there's simply a statement of fact. He's not found the rhythm all throughout the season. He's not found the rhythm. I'll give you an example. Benchmark it on Declan Rice. Declan Rice has had the rhythm this season. He's been one of their standout players. And it's not to say he's not had bad games. He's had games where he's looked bang average, And for me, it was fatigue all over him. And that's why he's going to benefit from this Thomas Tuchel 1 week sort of rest a bit for those English players, because he summoned 35 players, and about 11 players are going to be rested for a week. They will not participate in the game against Uruguay, which is an international friendly for England in preparation for the World Cup, and then they will partake in the game against Japan. So the bit here about that is that he's going to get a bit rested. I don't know what's going to happen with Spain, with Luis de la Fuente, because he has Martin Zubimendi, he has Rodri. So if you do want to give preferential treatment to, let's say, Martin Zubimendi, to have him rested because he's played a whole chunk of minutes, then Manchester City may be raising questions and saying, how about our player in Rodrigo Hernandez Cascante? Doesn't he get the rest? I'd say to this, I think it wouldn't be preferential treatment. Why? Martin Zubimendi has 2 Champions League games to play, which Rodri does not have. So that means that in itself is rest time for Rodri. So if you want a player that you're going to give more minutes, it will be Rodri. And then, given how the season started for Rodri in terms of injuries and setbacks, when he was recovering from that anterior cruciate ligament injury, it's he's not played as many minutes as Zubimendi has played, really. So you would sort of take it that way. Maybe the risk would be another injury, but all teams have their hearts in their mouth. All managers, I think, play in whatever simplest of tongues they can play. They can play through. They sort of brace themselves for an injury-free international break. And the question is, when has it ever been an injury-free international break? It may not be particular to your team, but it will be for somebody else. So, and that's the concern. Why? Because teams are in running for titles, they are in runnings for top four finishes, they are running for European places, they are in runnings for against fighting against relegation and things like that. So the different components or different circumstances for respective teams. If you're Man City, you're thinking, I need to have my guys all fully back fit to be ready to try and take on Arsenal in this remainder of the Premier League title race, with 8 games left to play for Man City and 7 for the Arsenal. If you're Arsenal, you're thinking, I need to have my squad fully back fit again. Urian Timber, we know, missed the final through injury. Martin Odegaard missed the final through injury. These are players that are going to be, back home rested during the course of the international break. Then the question is, when you do have them back, if you're Mikel Arteta, do you organize a sort of a behind closed door friendly for them to try and get them some minutes in their legs? Because it's one thing to train and it's another to play in a match. So, but then that also depends on when they do return. Because for quite some time, I think Arsenal fans have had this expectation that Martin Odegaard is going to be back, and he's just not returned. I think we're close on to a month now, So, as unfortunate as it is for them, I think they're also hesitant to rush him back because he suffered many injuries. I think this could pass for his fourth injury this season. He had 2 shoulder injuries and then he had a knee injury. So, I mean, it's hard. For Ebeleche Eze, it's a calf injury, So that's there. So you have Saliba down, you have Eze down, you have Martin Odegaard down, you have Urian Timber down. That's in addition to Mikel Merino. That's a whooping 5 players, all who are capable of starting in that Arsenal side. It's not good. It's not looking good for them. Anyways, deep into the final, how did Arsenal lose it? In my opinion, I thought they lost it particularly in 2 fronts. One, we've not known Mikel Arteta to be a sentimental guy, but for some reason he decided to be sentimental, or at least that's how we can interpret it, when he gave Kepa Arrizabalaga the opportunity to start in the final and eventually cost them the final. He's been known to be ruthless with players that make mistakes or with players that he feels are not yet tuned to the level that he wants. We saw it in the aftermath of losing to Aston Villa by 2-1 earlier on this season, when Ebeleche Eze went on to be sidelined for over a month because of his mistake. He did not do well to sort of cover Matty Cash on the other side as Matty Cash scored, because he said Mikel Arteta believes if you cannot defend, then you have no place in his team. So, because defending is a collective responsibility, everybody has to run. It doesn't matter who has dropped the ball, and things like that. So, he's known to be that. We saw in his decision making when he dropped Aaron Ramsdale for David Raya, when he signed him initially on loan from Brentford in the 2023-2024 season. You remember after the, I think, September international break, he dropped him. Usually that's when he makes his move or his change. So you have that. And then you have other examples of him dropping players for making mistakes. And whereas he understands that mistakes are part of the game, because not every player that has made a mistake has been dropped. We've seen William Saliba make mistakes. We've seen Gabriel Magalhaes make a mistake. We've seen David Raya make a mistake. We've seen Martin Zubimendi make mistakes, and he's not dropped them all, So, but whatever the context he applies to those respective situations to make those decisions, he's known to be ruthless. He's not been known to be sentimental with players. So now, a lot of people were making the argument, look, Kepa Arrizabalaga has been the number 2. He's been the goalkeeper for these cup competitions. He's got you to the final. You may as well play him. And that's fair enough, a discussion or a submission to make. But I do not think, as a manager in Mikel Arteta, you owe it to him to play in the final. He's number two. He's your second choice goalkeeper for a reason, and you must respect that. You need to be, unless your hands are tied, which they weren't in this particular case because he had Raya on the bench. You start with your number one goalkeeper. Yesterday, no matter how good Manchester City looked, and particularly in the second half, the difference was the goalkeeper. If Kepa Arrizabalaga does not make the mistake he makes, fumbling Ranchaki's cross in the 60th minute, we'll perhaps be having a different conversation. 4 minutes later, when he doesn't attack that cross for Matheus Nunes, and he does not stay alert enough to try and make a save, he does not help his team. Because the reason as why, and particularly this is for the second goal, we know he's entirely to blame for the first one, but the reason as why I call him out for the second goal is that after your teammates have given everything on the other side, as a goalkeeper, you ought to come out with those moments that keep your team in the game. So on that second goal, it was an opportunity for him to keep his team in the game, but he still did it. Why? He sees the cross coming. He does not come out to attack it. Maybe he judges that it's far out, that he does not need to move out of his goal and to try and attack it and possibly miss it. Or he was already antagonized by his own mistake. See, once you make a mistake in the game, the kind of mistake that costs your team in conceding or in getting a red card, but in this particular case, conceding a goal, you're going to have a timid performance. Why? Because you then become too cautious to trying not to make another mistake, or your decision making is biased by the mistake that you just made. So I feel that in that second goal, he has his decision making biased or prejudiced by the mistake he had just made because it came in quick succession. It's one thing to make a mistake, let's say in the 10th minute, and then the next time you're vulnerable is in the 60th minute. That's enough period of time for you to recover and get yourself back into the momentum of the game. For Kepa Arrizabalaga yesterday, it was in quick succession. 60th minute, 64th minute. So I hold him responsible for not coming out for that ball. Because I was reviewing the action in that moment, and I thought he could have actually come out for that ball. But in the event that he made the decision not to come out for it, how he readjusts before O'Reilly scores is the issue for me, is the issue for me. He does not he does not readjust enough to try and make the save, So again, when you look at the flight of the ball or where the cross is made from by Matheus Nunes, first of all, it's inside deep in the 18 yards box, and he plays the cross coming sort of outwards, in the outwards, like not deep into the 16 yards box. And now, like I said, in his judgment, perhaps he's made the judgment that I don't need to go out for that cross because it's too far out. I may not get there in time, or I may not be able to gather it. Then it begs the question, how do you then reposition yourself or readjust yourself for the resultant action? And when you watch back on that moment, the way he readjusts, of course, the ball is headed back in the direction of literally where he's coming from, and therefore it becomes a bit easy, a bit difficult. But I felt where he was, he could have done enough to put his hand onto that ball. That's what I felt like. particularly on the second decision. So on the first decision, I exonerate him to say, well, because I thought it should be, trying to track that cross and perhaps cut it out. And I thought he really, really struggled with crosses. And then Bukayo Saka sort of loses his man in a way. He lets you're trying to defend. You're tracking a player, like you've come tracking a player, and it's a cross in, and then you're letting the opponent get ahead of you, in front of you. So how are you going to defend against that ball? How? So it becomes difficult. So two players are at fault in that particular case. One is Kepa Arrizabalaga, because I believe when you watch the header, the way that ball is headed, or the way it goes past him, it's not like it's not like it's been overly bent to the other side, that he really, really stretched. He was overstretched and could not get there, But, and then Bukayo Saka, the way he defends in the moment, it's like he was present and absent at the same time. He was physically present, but absent by mind, That's basically how I can interpret that. So I thought that's where Arsenal lost the final. Then, away from the goalkeeper and Bukayo Saka, the other part or plot where I thought they lost the final was in another poor decision-making by Mikel Arteta. Now, Piero Hincapié is known as an aggressive defender. He's known for that. But once he gets the yellow card in that game, he was never the same player. He was never the same player. He was playing cautiously. He was playing cautiously to avoid getting a second booking, because he knew that getting a second yellow card would cost his team an entire man on the pitch. So with that, he ended up giving space to Ryan Chucky. He was not getting closer to him or close to him enough, And I remember there was one moment he got close to him, sort of more like gripping him literally on his back, at least 2 or 3 times before he withdrew, because he's thinking to himself, the moment I place my foot wrong, I'm going to get a second yellow card, I'm going to be sent off. So I thought Mikel Arteta should have made the observations early enough to pass judgment that he needed to withdraw him at halftime for Ricardo Carafiori. Now, Ricardo Carafiori himself is a bit of a hot wire. That's known. But you give yourself a chance. The other one is playing with reservation because he has a booking. And to his defense, that yellow card really, really got in his head. It got in his head in the sense that he did not want to overcommit. He did not want to make any mistake, because the difference between a well-timed tackle and a mistimed tackle can be a microsecond or just a second, in you arriving late in the challenge, and suddenly you're getting your second yellow card and you're being sent off. And then everybody will be asking, how on earth do you do that when you know you're already on a booking? Definitely you're going to get a second booking and get sent off. And how dare you let your team down, getting sent off and getting down to 10 men in a final? So all those questions will be asked. So he had that reservation to him. And this is where I fault Mikel Arteta, that he should have been able to see it out and make the change. Now, guess what? Eventually, he realizes it. And that's after they've conceded. And he's preparing to make the change to bring on Ricardo Carafiori. Ricardo Carafiori, I think, was coming on around the same time Kai Havertz was being withdrawn as well for Noni Madueke. And as he prepares to make that change, they concede the second. And then it's game over. It's done and dusted. Because at 1-0, you're thinking, yeah, we can still fight and bounce back. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But at 2-0 in the final, especially 2-0 in the second half, it's difficult. Difficult in a game where you do not have the momentum, because at that moment, Arsenal did not have the momentum. The game was not on their side. They were defending, because Manchester City had majority of ball possession. But even when you go back to their first half performance, as good as it was, and it wasn't very good, it wasn't excellent, it was just good, they struggled to get out entirely. But this was more evident in the second half. They struggled to get out of the back. They struggled to play out. They struggled to have a hold of the ball. Arsenal in the second half did not play a progressive pass until the 71st minute. That's how long it took. That's 25 minutes into an entire half. That's more than half of the half. So really, then, because they struggled to play out in the first half, because it's a final and majority of teams will behave that way, you felt that they were cautious, wanting not to risk it, that it cost them going forward. They were not brave enough to go forward in terms of the attackings. So, because they were not brave enough to go forward and play dominantly in Manchester City's half, they ended up sitting in deep in different phases of the game. And then Man City brought the game to them. At the end of the day, Manchester City had only 2 shots on target, and those were the 2 goals from O'Reilly, even with all their majority possession and pressure that they managed to pile on. But the key was in that being cautious, because Arsenal sometimes play too cautious not to concede, that it comes at the expense of not being brave enough to go and risk it and try and cause damage on the other side, to try and win it. You get the sense? And yet I felt, even though Kushanov had a very brilliant game and Nathan Ake, it's Arsenal that gave them the opportunity to be that good, because they were not troubling them enough. So at the end, I thought that those are the fronts on which Arsenal lost the game. In the poor decision-making by Mikel Arteta, poor decision-making and delayed decision-making. 2 things. Poor decision-making in choosing to go with Kepa Arrizabalaga, delayed decision-making in delaying to take off Piero Hincapi for Ricardo Carafiori, and then Kepa Arrizabalaga himself, the errors he makes, or the error that he made, particularly for the first goal, and that playing with caution. Those are the 4 fronts on which I thought Arsenal lost the final. It's that simple, in my personal assessment. You could have a different assessment. Just let me know down in the comment section. I'll be reading each and every comment. I never skip a comment, or at least I try not to. And even if I do skip one, I eventually go back to it. But that was my assessment of it. Now, moving forward, or moving on from that, I think we've dedicated enough time to the Carabao Cup final. Allow us move on. But in moving on, this is news that came in from Fabrizio Romano late last night about Antoine Griezmann. He said, Antoine Griezmann to Orlando City. Here we go. Verbal agreement in place for the French star to join the Major League Soccer side. Agreement on a deal from July 2026. That's in the summer, on free transfer when he leaves Atletico de Madrid. After deal for March rejected, agreement done for the summer. Griezmann will travel this week to the USA, as Marca reported. So that's him confirming. So yeah. Then okay. Okay. As just digesting a comment. So, okay, moving on. The Madrid derby. That one ended 3-2 in victory for Real Madrid. But it was no easy, it was no walkover of a game. Atletico de Madrid went forward through Ademola Lookman. Then Real Madrid got the equalizer. That was, I think, a penalty from Vinicius Junior. Then they went into the lead thanks to that goal from Fede Valverde. Then from Fede Valverde, then Molina scored a stunning strike. Molina scored a stunning goal. You need to go and see that goal. It was such a stunning strike. He scored to anyways, I'll leave. Forget that. So Molina's goal, you guys, you must go and watch it. You must go and watch it, really. You must go and watch it. It was such a beautiful goal. A beautiful goal from distance. It was such a beautiful, beautiful goal. If you love football, you're going to love that. You're going to love that goal. The way he strikes that ball straight away as soon as he receives the pass was simply good to watch. And then, of course, Real Madrid, being Real Madrid, go on the other side and score through, I think, Vinicius Junior, who eventually wins it for them. And stupid enough, Fede Valverde concedes or decides that, yeah, it's a Madrid derby, so we must get it a little bit more heated up. And he makes a stupid tackle. It's a tackle from behind. He appears to have no intention to play the ball, but rather play the man. He's given a straight red card. There's an appeal from Real Madrid players to take it to VAR, and I think VAR had their moment at time reviewing the incident, but decided it's not a clear and obvious error from the referee in awarding the red card. So the red card stands. So he will be suspended for, I think, the next two games in as far as, and that was in the 77th minute. And then thereon, Atletico de Madrid had to hang on with their lives. Real Madrid had to hang on with their lives to see out that victory. And it was the importance of that. That was that Barcelona had won a day earlier against Rayo Vallecano by 0-0. So Real Madrid needed to win that game to move within, to go back within 4 points of the La Liga title chase behind Barcelona. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. First of all, my prediction is that Barcelona will win the Spanish La Liga title. They will defend it. They should be winning their 29th Spanish La Liga title, I think, because they won the 28th last season. Now, then, the day Real Madrid decided to drop points, and let Barcelona make those 4 points, that 4 point lead, make it 7, that's the day it's going to be absolutely done and dusted, absolutely over. Now, because for as long as they stay in this, how? For example, you could have a weekend where Barcelona lets it draw and go within 5 points. And then if Real Madrid can win, they come back within 2 points, you know? And remember, we have an El Clasico to be played on match day 35. That is with 3 games left to the end of the season. So for as long as we have that, Real Madrid will always have a fighting chance, you know? They will have a fighting chance in this title race. But it's a 2-horse race. Barcelona do not look like they're about to lose a game or even drop points. They've been really, really brilliant, particularly at home. They've been winning their games. So it's really hard to, you know, to see. But Real Madrid overall had a good game. They had created chances. You had Fede Valverde in around the 8th minute hit the base of the upright. When he went on a quick run, I mean, he's just in that sort of phase in the season where everything he was doing was right. Because remember, he scored a hat-trick against Manchester City in the first leg. Then he scored the previous weekend as they beat Elche by 4 goals to 1. Then in the Champions League, in the reverse fixture against Manchester City, he did not score, but he had a good game. And then yesterday he scored. So yesterday he scored. And he just does score beautiful goals, by the way. He just does score beautiful goals. He does score beautiful goals. So it was a good performance for him until he decided, yeah, I need to take a man out. And he was so blatant about it that even I, who is a Real Madrid fan, could hardly defend that. I could not find the words to defend it. So, yeah, that's how it finished 3-2. But, I mean, what you'll have to see about this game, these big games, and remember the first leg, Atletico de Madrid won it 5-2. The El Clasico ended 2-1 in victory for Real Madrid. The Supercopa España final ended 3-2 in favor of Barcelona. When you watch these teams press on and play with that attacking freedom, it's not because the opponent has sort of given them a free pass. No, it's because they've worked hard enough to create those spaces and they are brave enough to go for it and risk it and, you know, have a good game. Somebody raised it, and it begs the question that oftentimes in the Premier League, when you watch big games these days, they play a lot with caution. Teams do not want to risk it. They are too afraid to lose that they do not fight enough to win. I don't know if you make sense of that statement. They are too afraid to lose that they do not risk to win. I'm one of those people that doesn't take too many risks, or at least is risk averse. Because and this is come in so many things that I do. And I think we're all prone to it in our daily or normal lives. You're too afraid of losing or getting it wrong that you don't even try to do it. In recent times, I've sort of readjusted my mindset to sometimes risk it. Now, business people or people from the business world or in intellect will say, yeah, you're taking calculated risks. Well, I don't know if they're well too calculated. Every risk, of course, you weigh your pros and cons. That's that's a given. But I've gotten myself, or my mindset at least, into a space where I think to myself, what's the downside of not doing it? Because I look at it in the sense that, what do I lose if I don't do it? So, because also in the same game, you had Julian Alvarez rattle the upright. And this was in the 81st minute. He rattled the upright. Andre Runin was beaten. So this game could have easily ended 3-3, But teams forget that. For example, of course, drawing to take a point is better than losing. But when you draw, you miss 2 points. And yet when you risk it and win, you get 3. You get this. You get that. If you play cautiously and do not lose, you win a point, but you lose 2 points. But if you risk it and win, you get 3 points. Of course, if you risk it and don't win, you don't get any point. That's why it is called a risk now. You get. So, essentially, here's what it comes down to. If you win, you take 3 points. If you lose 3 points. But if you're cautious, you drop 2 points. Let me ask, would you rather win 2 games and lose 1 than draw 2 games and win 1? I'd rather win 2 and lose 1, because then I've dropped 3 points and gained 6. Really, if I draw 2 and win 1, I would have gained 5 points. So, teams must risk it. Go back to Arsenal's 1-0 defeat against Liverpool at Anfield. Go back to their goalless draw at the Emirates Stadium. Go back to their 1-1 draw against Manchester City at the Emirates. Go back to Arsenal's 1-1 draw against Chelsea in the Premier League. Go back to Manchester City versus Chelsea, 1-1 draw. Go back to what other game? There's a handful of big games in the Premier League where teams are cautious. When was the last time we had a big game end 3-2? The best of my recollection is Man United versus Arsenal. And you could see that Man United risked it. They went forward and it paid fruit. That's how they won 3-2. But how many of such games have we had throughout the entire campaign? I do not. When you look at big games, you'll find that scores are marginal. 2-1, 2-1, 1-0. Of course, Man City beat Liverpool in the first leg 3-0. But oftentimes you're going to find those big games ending with that marginal 1 goal advantage on the other side, or some of them ending in draws. So I feel for those of us that watch, love, and follow the Premier League almost religiously, something needs to change. Teams need to be a bit more brave. And it's not just about the big teams, by the way. I've also seen it with small teams. The one thing I appreciate about the Spanish La Liga is that even those mid-table teams, or what you pass or regard for small teams, when they come up against any opponent on any given day, they're going to go all out and attack. They won't always get it right. In other words, they won't always score. But you will see that they are intentional, that this is how we play. We're going to go forward. I'm sure Mikel Arteta is one of those managers that is constantly going to come under lots of criticism for this because, and to his defense, in my opinions, he's come from a history of being so offensive and win games, but it still hasn't won him titles. So he feels, I must try and do it another way if I'm to win titles. I do not think there's ever time Arsenal were accused of playing boring football, even at their worst. Why? Because they still entertained. Not that they do not entertain anymore, but they were more fluid. They played with a little bit more freedom. When you speak to Cesc Fabregas, he will tell you it's not an Arsenal vice. It's a modern day football vice where managers are too structured, are too controlling of that structure. And as good as Pep Guardiola's teams might look sometimes, they are culprits of that. It's structured play, pass it here, pass it there. You get the point. That. That's why sometimes teams that play in quick transitions will make it look more beautiful because it will be anywhere between 3 to 4 or 5 passes and bang, it's a goal. Go back to Man United's goal against Everton. They win the ball back. Matthias Cunha goes long to Brani Mbeumo. Pass, Sesko, bang, goal. Period. Not death by 1,000 cuts. So Pep Guardiola is the one that appreciates the death by 1,000 cuts. So really, I think Bayern Munich is one of those examples that you want to look at. They have a structured way of play, but I feel their players play with a lot more freedom. When you watch Michael Olise playing, he plays with more freedom. When you watch Jamal Musiala, when you watch Serge Gnabry, when you watch a Hurricane, Steve Bono says bananas. Oh, hi Steve, how are you doing? What's causing banana prices to surge? Last I checked, it was below that. Anyways, so I think all teams, especially these teams that want to play good football or attacking football, must be taking a page out of Bayern Munich. How they do it? It's still structured play, but they have more freedom to it. The players that ought to take on players will take them on, the Michael Olises of this world, and then play you that decent pinpoint pass and create loads and loads of chances. So it's something to really, really ponder about for Premier League fans in general, regardless of what team you do support. So anyways, in yesterday's game, according to some stats, Prime Victor Gyökeres made 0 shots on target or on goal, completed only 3 passes, won 2 out of 11 duels in 90 minutes. Do you remember when I was talking about the underperformers yesterday? Now, Um, Taiwo Awoni could face a sanction from the FA for taking off his shirt to reveal a religious message during Nottingham Forest's victory over Tottenham Hotspurs. Guys, I'm never going to understand this. Perhaps, maybe someday somebody will make me understand it. How and why displaying a religious message is bad for football or is bad for a player. When somebody says God is great or God is the greatest, because that was the message on his undershirt or inner top, what's wrong with that? It's first of all, if you're not a believer, it's not going to bother you. Two, if you're a believer, I don't think you take any harm in that. For me, the question is, what's the harm? I understand when they say no political messages, because political messages are divisive, are subject to opinion and things like that. And so is religion to a certain respect. But for a league that dedicates an entire month to the rainbow ribbons, and you cannot accommodate a religious message, what are you afraid? That Muhammad Salah is going to display some Arabic words? What wrong would that be if they're not bad words? I remember McKay, he displayed a message as such, and he sort of came under fire. I'm thinking to myself, what is wrong with that? What are they trying to tell us that we're not getting when it comes to these messages? What's there? Make it make sense. Because at the moment, it's not making much sense to me. Gas prices are up. Yeah, gas prices were bound to go up, Steve, because of what is happening. Thanks to, we have the USA to thank for. They decided to go and attack Iran together with Israel. And the Strait of Hormuz has not had ships freely flowing. So fuel supplies have been interrupted. Iran in retaliation has hit, power gas processing plants and things like that. So it's not business as usual. And those prices are going to continue going up. I, for one, am already concerned. For us in Uganda, fuel prices were already high because we buy a liter of petrol at $1.50. Now it's surging on to closer on to $2. So you can imagine. You can imagine. So it's really, really painful. And I can only sort of presume that for as long as that conflict goes on, the rest of the world is going to suffer for it in the economic sense of it, especially when it comes to gas or fuel. We know how reliant we are on gas, whether it's cooking in the modern world, whether it's our automobiles, generators to generate electricity for countries that rely on fuels and things like that. So it's going to be really, really difficult. And it is really, really difficult already. So even as we're experiencing that increase in prices, really. So yeah. So anyways, guys, thank you, Steve. Thank you so much, Misha, and every single one of you that has been part of this morning broadcast. I hope you guys go on to have a very, very wonderful week. But yeah, you'll allow me wrap it up here. It's been 1 hour of us doing this. I don't know. It's usually the international break is very, very challenging for us. Um, why? Because the topics it tends to leave us with are not topics that a lot of you enjoy, or a cup of tea for you. But we'll do our best to do videos. There's going to be a video coming out about the Carabao Cup final. So I'm looking to shooting that and having it on the channel today, before the end of today. So have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now.